You made a kid cry at camp. Well, like, was it on purpose? Like, were they being a brat and you actually, like, held them accountable, or, like, did you do bad? Well, guess we're gonna find out. Happy Apple Picking Day! Before we get started, just a few quick reminders for all of our new friends and some refreshers for some of our reoccurring friends. If you want to transfer your stories to be featured on Am I the Bad Apple, you can send them to my subreddit, r/Am I the Bad Apple. And just a reminder, we all come from different branches of the apple tree. And what that means is we've all grown up in different situations and different scenarios, and those experiences are going to shape our perspectives and our opinions and how we even just read these stories, right? I might read them in like a snarky attitude, and you might read them completely different in a very innocent attitude, and that's going to mess with how we portray the original posters, the OP, and that's going to determine how we receive different actions and words that are done and said. That's life. It's very normal. So if someone doesn't read or hear or agree with how you view a story, it might just be because they have different experiences than you that shape those opinions. I welcome you guys to talk about them in the comments. I mean, you might not even like how I see a story because we might have different experiences, and that's okay. You can talk about them in the comments without pointing fingers, but just remember, just because you don't change someone's mind doesn't necessarily make them a bad person. People can have different boundaries. People can have different values. It's okay to not have the same exact opinions on things. So with that being said, let's get started with this week's episode of Am I the Bad Apple? Let's go apple picking! Apple number 1. Am I the bad apple for sticking my friends with a crazy big bill? I, 27 male, have been a part of a small friend group, around 8 people in total, basically since college. For some background, 2 people from the group, Susan and Greg, are absolute leeches. Going out for lunch? Expect them to order the most expensive item on the menu and then feed you some sob story about their finances and dump half the bill on you. Last weekend, Dan, one of the other people from the group, told me about a casual dinner that everyone was getting together for. I told him, look, if Susan or Greg were gonna be there, I'm not interested in coming along. He tells me, yeah, they'll be there, but that I should just put my opinions aside and just come. And this is where I might be the jerk. I agreed with him and told him I'd be there. I show up and we all get to talking. That's when everyone starts putting in their orders. Most people ordered a dish around $40, and there were only about 6 people there. But when it got to Susan and Greg, they both ordered crazy expensive dishes, both around $200. When it was my turn to order, everyone looked at me, but I just picked up the menu, pointed to a $4 Miller Lite, and sent the waiter away. Dan asked why I hadn't ordered anything at all, and I said, I just lost my appetite. 2 of our other friends also got up to go cancel their food orders and said they'd just have a few drinks. After the main courses come out, I saw Susan and Greg just kind of picking at their food. They didn't even eat it all. The waiter brings over the check. Greg grabs the waiter and asks if he can split the check 6 ways. I stand up and correct him, saying the check should be split 3 ways. Greg looked confused and asked me why, since we always all split the bill, and I remind him that 3 of us hadn't gotten any food, so we should just pay for our drinks. So basically at the end of the night, Dan, who probably only ate around $50 worth of food, was stuck with a $150 check at the end. And yes, I remember the exact number because I saw his jaw dropped when he picked up the receipt. I slid a 10 towards the check for my drink, said goodbye to everyone, and walked out. The next morning, I found my phone full of texts from Greg and Susan telling me that I was a jerk for not ordering anything and forcing them to pay more than what they accounted for. I honestly laughed because their steaks alone were more than what they paid as their half, but to each their own, right? I also got messages from Dan saying that I should have just not come instead of pulling that stunt and getting him stuck with an outrageous bill. I don't know. Was I the bad apple? I don't feel like I did anything wrong, but now everyone's mad at me and apparently I'm causing a big fuss, so let me know. I know people are not going to like what I have to say. I think that I have a very logical and rational opinion about this. I can just hear the keyboard. I'm going to go crab apple, and here's why. Hold your horses. Just give me a second. I totally agree with him that he should not have to foot the bill for Greg and Susan. 1,000%. Like, if you think these people are leeches, you shouldn't have to go to dinner with them. You shouldn't have to pay for them. If you don't want to, like, that's your money. You don't have to pay for people that you don't want to pay for, right? I don't like the way this was gone about. And I'll get to Dan in a second. Just hold on. If you, like, to say you're in a friend group with 8 people and then to just sit there and talk about how much you dislike 2 people in the group and how you don't even want to go to dinner when they're there, like, well, this is, like, first of all, I have, like, a few points. Just bear with me. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of grody. I don't love that. Like, and I say that as someone who so many times in my life I've been deemed the annoying one, right? That, to me, like, that triggers me personally. From say, oh yeah, I'm in this friend group, but I really hate these 2 people. That really triggers me. That, like, oh, emotional PTSD. That already bothers me. Like, if you're not friends with these people, just don't be friends with these people. If you don't like them, just don't be friends with them. Like, why are you pretending? That is the worst. That's the worst. I don't like that. Second of all, if you have a problem with what people in your friend group are doing, and you're adamant about staying friends with them, I guess, for the friend group, like, why not have a conversation first? Like, why not speak up about constantly having to pay more for their meals and their food? Like, I feel like a conversation needs to be had in general. And I'm not saying that makes, like, and I'm not saying that just like saying, like, I feel like that is the right way to go about things in general. I feel like that's just the way that you treat people and friends. Now, I'm not saying that, like, now I want to be so clear. I'm not saying that going and saying, like, oh, I only had a $4 beer, that's all I'm going to pay for, is bad. I don't think that's the problem at all. I don't like the whole idea of, like, going in knowing that's what you're gonna do specifically to make a scene about it. Like, I feel like in that instance, like, the more mature thing to do would be to, like, let Dan know, like, hey, I don't want to go if they're there. And then Dan's like, oh, come on, please just come. I feel like saying, okay, but, like, I'm not paying for their stuff is a pretty reasonable thing to say. Like, I don't see anywhere in this story where it was mentioned that you said something or mentioned to someone. Like, everyone has different financial situations, okay? And I'm not saying, like, take pity on Susan and Greg. I'm saying that, like, when I go out to eat with friends, like, when we go to trivia, sometimes I just hand the server my card and I just pay for the table because, like, why not? When I'm with content friends, like, literally, most likely someone at the table is just handing, it's usually Ben, and just handing the server the credit card because, like, we just get the table. And, like, you got it this time, I know I'll get it one time. Like, that's pretty normal. So, like, for me, splitting the bill wouldn't have been the most crazy thing in the world. And I'm not saying that that makes it right. I'm saying that Dan genuinely might not have thought about it being such a big deal to other people. Like, if Dan is constantly okay with doing that, he might not understand how detrimental it is for other people and their financial situations. So I feel like OP needed to, like, express this to somebody that it's clearly a problem, but he didn't. And again, I want to be so clear. I'm not upset that OP went in knowing that he was only going to pay for his food. I don't like him keeping this resentful anger to himself and purposely going in knowing that it was gonna cause a problem. Like, I think that he was right, I just don't like the way that he went about it, especially, like, you say you're friends with all of these people, and you went in knowing that it was gonna be worse for, like, other people, and if you brought it up to them beforehand and said, like, hey, I have a problem with this, I'm not doing that before, and they still were like, it's fine, we're still gonna do it, that's one thing. And I feel like so many people are going to leave comments like, well, that's not his problem, that's not his finances, it's not his business, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, you're right. I'm just saying I don't like that mentality because these are supposed to be your friends. Like, I would never go to an event with my friends and, like, in the back of my head of, like, yeah, like, I'm going to make a point and I'm going to make everyone else foot a bigger bill for these other friends because I want to make a point. Like, I don't like that attitude. I don't like that mentality. Like, you knew what you were doing. You knew the situation you were putting some of your other friends in. You knew that. And I just don't love how that was went about when these are supposed to be people that you care about. Maybe not Susan and Greg, but is Dan not your friend? Like, you couldn't give Dan a heads up? Are the other people at the table that just so happened to cancel their food orders, like, are they not also your friends? Like, you didn't want to give them a heads up? Like, that's what I don't like. I understand protecting yourself and protecting your own finances and things like that. Like, I value that. Like, stand up for yourself. If they're leeching money out of you, yeah, for sure, put your foot down and stand up for yourself. But like, the way that this went about it, I feel like it kind of indirectly threw other friends under the bus also. And like, I just don't like how it wasn't discussed beforehand. That's it. That's why I'm going crabapple. I feel like this should have been addressed. This should have been talked about. And like, even to say like, oh, well, I'm not going if Susan and Greg are there. Like, you didn't even explicitly say, I don't like that I always have to pay for them. And yeah, maybe Dan gets it, but maybe he doesn't. Like, and I only say that because I know people are gonna say like, well, he told Dan. Well, no, he says I don't want to go if Greg and Susan are there. The OP thinks they're annoying. Maybe Dan did understand the money thing. We don't actually know. We don't know why Dan thought he had a problem with Greg and Susan. We don't see anywhere in the story where it was specifically brought up that the money thing was a problem to him, to the other people, to the other friends. So that's what I don't like. I don't hate what he did. I just don't like how it went about. So that's why I'm going crabapple. And like, for Dan to get mad at OP for, like, that was weird. I didn't like that either. Like, for him to say, oh, well, you might as well just not have come because now I have this big bill. Well, like, wouldn't the bill be the exact same? Like, you paid the bill as if OP wasn't there. And you say, oh, well, you might as well not have come. Like, to me, that screams, we only wanted you there for the money cut. I don't like that either. I'm not saying that Dan's a great person. I'm not saying Susan and Greg are great people. I'm saying that, like, honestly, I would go Bad Batch, but I only think OP is a crab apple. I don't think OP is a bad apple. But like, Dan, Greg, Susan, it's all weird. It's all sketchy. I'm not a fan. And like, Greg and Susan are just bad apples. I shouldn't have to explain that. They just are. Like, expecting your friends to pay for you all the time, I don't love it. And like, if you're going through something and you really need help, okay, that's one thing. But then like, be aware of what you're ordering at dinner. Like, that's... Apple number 2. Hi, my sweet love. You come in the snuggle while we do apples? I'll try to be quiet. I know you don't like loud noises. You don't usually come for bad apples, do you? Milo gets very sensitive to sounds, so a lot of times when I'm recording, he does not like to be in here, but he's just been very lovey today and has not liked that I had to take a break from our snuggle time on the couch downstairs to record. So he's going to grace us with his presence today because he's a good boy. I love you. Am I the bad apple for threatening to call the police on my ex? I am a single father. I was denied access to my child until he was 3 months old and had CPS called on me multiple times for things such as my son having a tiny red dot on his wrist or a scratch on his bum. I had to get a court order to see him despite efforts from both CPS and lawyers. My ex claimed I was abusive, but has no proof. I was able to get therapists and doctors and CPS to vouch for me, and I was able to show that I'm not abusive. I've gone to court 3 times now, and my ex has just been repeatedly breaking court orders, deciding to go on vacation with our son, and like, just to see her family, even during my time, against the court order. I was supposed to have him on his first birthday, and she canceled because he's coughing, so he's too sick to come with me. I had family who drove hours one way to see him, including my niece and nephew who are toddlers, and my sister who's 7 months pregnant. I mean, yes, there were times where I missed visitation because I had to work, but there were other times where my great-grandfather celebrated his 95th birthday, and my ex refused to let me have him a couple extra hours so I could bring him to the party, saying he needs a consistent schedule. Well, now she's canceling an overnight 2-day court-ordered visit to go see her family. This is getting ridiculous. Like, I've decided that I'm not agreeing to this, and if she goes and takes our child, I'm gonna call the police. Does that make me a bad apple? I don't know anything about visitation and all those things, okay? I really don't. I have no idea what it's like to have a child, much less share a child with someone that you're no longer with. I will keep this short and sweet, and I will let my parents in the comments that have more experience with this take on a more detailed role, because like again, I have no experience with this. When it comes to things that are like court ordered that your ex is violating, I absolutely think that needs to be reported. I absolutely think that needs to be documented. I absolutely think that you need to vouch for yourself when it comes to court. Like, document that stuff so that if you ever go back for like custody things again, like you have all that. Even though I don't agree with it, I don't think her not letting you have some extra hours that you weren't allotted for like special occasions warrants a police call. Like, she's not breaking the law. She's not breaking the rules. Yeah, she's being difficult and petty, but that's not illegal. So even though it's like unfortunate and I get where your frustration is, that's not, like, that doesn't fit. So like when you go to like make this report and when you go to like talk to the police or the judge or whoever you do that to, like I don't actually know the process. I've never experienced it. I would leave that stuff out. It's not relevant. And I actually think that it would hurt your case to like be spending too much time on that. You want to spend all your time and all your effort on the report on like what she's actually doing that's breaking the rules and what she's actually doing that's breaking the court order and breaking the law, not like petty stuff, because that's when they're going to tune you out and that's when it's going to make the other stuff that's legit seem less important. So I'm gonna go good Apple for calling the police on if she takes him while you're supposed to have a court order visit. For sure, I'm gonna go good out with Apple with that. But I would just also keep in mind the other things. You know what I mean? Milo left. He said that was too much noise. My poor baby. He's just so sensitive. Apple number 3. Am I the bad apple for telling my neighbor to grow the F up? I bought a house in a community without an HOA or a homeowners association. I just wanted my home to be my home, and that includes making it look the way that I want. I also chose a neighborhood that already has fun, colorful houses instead of just plain earth tones. I finally got to the point where I could repaint my house. I picked a soft peachy color with sage blue and soft and dark pink accents. Fun and colorful without being too out there. I think if you Google Coolers Blue Sage Pink, you'll see a similar palette. My neighbor Paul hates it and has been complaining since we started the project. He's also made his opinion known that he hates our front lawn with lots of wildflowers and sunflowers and fun garden flags, a little free library, all the things. Each and every time, I've told him I don't care. Truly, I don't. And I've suggested a few times that maybe he'd be happier in an HOA community that has control over everything and forces people into having earth-toned homes. But Paul got angry when I suggested that and said he's lived in his home for 15 years and he shouldn't have to move. I told him, okay, well, I guess you'll have to learn to live with a little color. Last weekend, I was putting in pavers that my niece and I painted together. I mean, they were all things like ladybugs and turtles, birds, all in fun colors. I adore them, and my niece is so excited that she gets to be a part of my home. Paul came over to complain again and saying it was all an eyesore. And my niece was there, so I just told him, look, it's time for you to grow up and get the F over what I'm doing with my house. He got even pissier and told me that I have no right to talk to him that way, and don't I know who I'm talking to? I told him to just go away and get a life. If he has so much free time to groan and moan about a colorful house, maybe he should get a hobby. He stormed off, calling me a nasty piece of work, and my niece was cracking up on the sidewalk. For the record, she's 15. I know some people are really uptight about cussing in front of their kids and teenagers, but like in our family, we don't care. So that's just what we do. Anyways, one of our neighbors came to tell me that he's been flapping his yap about how disrespectful I am to talk to him like that. She told me she knows he's a pain, but he's been in the neighborhood forever, and it's probably worth being nice to him. I don't know. Is telling him to get a life that big of a deal? Am I the bad apple? No, like, I think there are gonna be some people in the comments that are like, you could have like been kind, but in all honesty, like, why should she have to put up with her neighbor getting in her face about her doing that to her home? Like, she bought the home. It's like there's no HOA. He has no say in anything that she does to her home. Like, genuinely none. So like, I don't understand why she should be expected to just deal with this grown man coming over and like giving her crap about her. Like, he's harassing her. He's harassing her. He keeps coming over to her property and yelling to her about what she's doing with her own home. And you're saying like, that's fine and she should just deal with it. But like, telling him to get a life is too far. No, him going over to her property and yelling at her all the time is too far. Like, no, he needs to not be over there. He needs to stay at his own home. Like, I don't understand that. Well, he's been here a long time. You should be kind. Well, maybe he should be kind. What? Like, just because you've been somewhere a long time, whether it's a neighborhood or a job or whatever, doesn't give you a pass to just treat people badly. What? No. I don't think there was anything wrong with that. I probably would add in, like, this is private property, you're trespassing, don't come back. Just don't. That's what I would say. Good apple. Apple number 4. Am I the bad apple for singling out a kid at camp? I'm 14 and this happened last week. I'm a camp counselor at a Girl Scout camp, and this year I was assigned to the 3rd graders. We have them for about 7 hours a day. The kids get very tired very quickly and usually don't like to walk. There are 4 counselors and 10 campers. Usually us counselors try to piggyback everyone, but this is kind of where the problem starts. I'm currently about a week away from foot surgery, and I also have an x-ray in process to scan for scoliosis. I've been trying to be very careful, but at this camp it's been hard. There's one girl that we'll call B. B is slightly overweight and she's almost my height. She's also been wearing a skirt all week. She keeps asking for piggyback rides every day, but I never let her because we need to be careful about counselor and camper safety. I mean, I think I would drop her. I have 0 muscle mass whatsoever and am really just weak in general. I'm too scared to carry B because I don't think I'll be able to hold her without falling, and I also want to make sure that I don't hurt my foot prior to the operation. I've never told her why I won't carry her, but I think she's noticed. I know my reasons are valid, but I still feel pretty guilty because she's still a little kid. I really like her, but I need us both to be safe at all times. So, am I the bad apple? I am probably gonna say something that's gonna upset some parents, and that's okay. Actually, I don't know. I think reasonable people will all agree with me. I'm going to go crab apple, and it's a soft crab apple, because do I think that you intended any harm? No, but I think this is a learning experience as you deal with kids. Like, if you're a camp counselor, I'm assuming that you like enjoy doing stuff with kids, that you're going to be a camp counselor like next year, maybe the year after, like as you know what I mean? So here is a learning experience that I think will be very valuable for you as you continue working with children, that like if you're gonna do something with or for one kid, like you have 10 campers, right? If you're gonna do something with or for one kid, unless it's like a medical accommodation, that is different, you need to be prepared to do the exact same thing with the other kids, all of them. And if you cannot, then you don't do it with the one. Oh, they're tired, they can be tired. They don't wanna walk, they can walk. If they physically can't, maybe you should change the route a little bit, but if you cannot carry all of the children, don't carry any of them. Because even though you're not trying to make them feel bad about their weight or their height or whatever, you still are. You're still singling the kid out. You're still making them feel self-conscious. And I know that you're not doing it on purpose. I understand that. And I'm not trying to be mean and I'm not trying to be too harsh. I'm just letting you know that like as you go forward working with kids, if you can't do something for all of them across the board, again, unless there's a medical accommodation, then you don't do it with any of them. So like if there's a kid who has a medical accommodation that like you need to carry them, yeah, that's a good excuse. Like that's whatever. And you just come with an excuse of why they get the special treatment. Special treatment. Like you know what I mean. Like it's not special treatment, but the kids will see it. You can't out the medical you can't out the medical accommodation. You can't out the medical need. You come up with like an excuse for the other kids just to appease them. But like in general, you can't just leave one kid out, especially when it's like because you can't carry her. Like that's a you problem in the nicest way possible. You don't want her to become self-conscious about her height and weight because you are weak, like physically. And again, I'm not trying to be too harsh on you or anything like that. I'm just telling you for next time you interact with kids, it's either all or none. Again, unless there's medical accommodations, that's different. All or none. You just can't do that. So I'm gonna go crabapple because I don't think you made the right choices, but I don't think that you had like malicious intent. So that's where I'm going. So I got 2 good apples and 2 bad apples. At least that's what I got. I wanna know if you got anything similar, anything different. Definitely let me know down in the comments. And as a reminder, if you want a chance for your stories to be featured in Am I the Bad Apple, you can send it to my subreddit, r/AmITheBadApple. And for your well wishes, today is National Fresh Breath Day and National Root Beer Float Day. So I think what I'm going to encourage for everyone, I mean, you obviously can have options, like whichever one like works for you. But for me, I think going to have a root beer float and then brushing your teeth so you have fresh breath after is the perfect way to celebrate. Which is like actually weird for me to say because I don't really drink soda, but like I would do it for today. I'd do it for the holiday, do it for the bit. Absolutely I would. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day and hope to see you all next week. Bye my lovelies. Mwah.